Hi, I'm Johnny Profane. DSM-5, diagnosis 299.00. An autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. Why get one? Does it label you for life? Does it change anything? If you're autistic, you've already answered these questions for yourself. But if you love one, parent one, employ some, or wonder if you are one, well, these are more than casual questions. Here's my story. Autistic as fuck out loud. Episode 8, How to Get Diagnosed Actually Autistic in just 26 years. Real talk, adult to adult. But I suspect you'll find some reassurance here and info you may want to share with someone you know. Who cares? First off, this is not a poor me story. This is a journey to autistic joy story. I'm a blogger, podcaster, and pretend rock star. Decent following, after at least 5 other careers. I'm also actually autistic, or my fave hashtag, AutisticAF. 2 most frequent private message questions I get. Not about lyrics, or why I rock a mohawk at nearly 70. The first, could I be autistic? And the second, should I get a diagnosis? Well, here's my way long, way detailed, way actually autistic answer. I was born in 1953. Long before autism made the scene in medicine or pop culture, more or less beginning in the 70s. By 4 years old, I knew I was different. Neighbor kids told me so. Family, too. A lot. In kindergarten, a teacher reported I was unusually creative, but stayed to myself. After a second-grade IQ test, they tagged me gifted. But teachers noted my behavior was odd. Solitary, my speech formal, a know-it-all, insensitive to context, talked and played during class, inattentive to lessons. I had one close friend at a time. In fact, only one I remember from all my 4 primary schools. 4th grade. Wonder what Jeff's been up to the last 60-odd years. Anyway, my intelligence was uneven. My reading skills, off the chart. But auditory learning, most of school back then, was difficult for me. Math tested high, but I was so impulsive on quizzes, I got remedial help. Tests were a silly game. It was fun being first one done, couldn't have cared less about grades. I'm a process, not a results-oriented guy. And most glaring of all, classmates, cousins, probably even parents, disliked, even hated me. I was a target for mockery, hate speech, bullying, physical and sexual attacks, later molestation. Plus, I earned almost universal disappointment. You're not living up to your potential. After graduation, dozens of jobs, dozens of relocations, lost years in a cult, lost years in awkward, mismatched relationships. And truth? A history of causing great pain to others. Inadvertently, maybe, but not always. Then, circling back to those couple of decades in what most would label a cult. Something was wrong with this picture. I first sought a diagnosis at 17, following suicide attempt number 1. The intake experience was horrific. I felt badgered by the therapist. I know you have a secret you want to tell me. Rinse, repeat. I wanted so badly to please her, but had no idea what I was feeling, much less why. A condition common enough to have its own label, alexithymia. I didn't try therapy again until Columbia Grad School, 1980. I was in a deep depression, spiraling down because I couldn't function in school yet again. Therapy hadn't worked the first time, but I didn't know where else to turn. End result, the psychiatrist dismissed me pronto, without a plan, when I didn't respond to imipramine, an antidepressant back then. Dunno, maybe I pissed him off. I seemed to have a talent for stepping on therapists' toes. So I dropped out, because I couldn't handle it, even after the department invited me to enter the doctoral program, saying they could work out those couple of incompletes. Finally, in 1991, I fully entered the mental health system and really never left for 26 years. Each new psychiatrist, psychologist, therapeutic social worker, each diagnosed me, beaming with confidence. Each was something entirely different. Between 1991 and 2017, I caught adjustment disorder, major depression, type 2 bipolarity, rapid cycling bipolarity, malingering, borderline personality disorder, PTSD, dissociative disorder, not otherwise specified, including discussion of multiple personalities, other suggestions and rule-outs, social and performance anxiety, ADHD, schizophrenia, TIAs, brief blood blocks in the brain, stroke damage. Pretty sure I left a few out. With each new diagnosis, each and every professional told me that he or she had nailed it this time. And unlike any doc in the past, they could really help. Radiating absolute certainty in their methods and drugs. New in just the past few years. Say, believing you can help someone else? Does that come with some kind of side order of built-in, self-serving arrogance? All I know is, don't cross them. Beware the backlash if you wound the ego of someone who is only trying to help. Over time, they medicated me with imipramine, all the modern SSRIs like Prozac, Wellbutrin, Effexor, lithium, Depakote, Tegretol, Gabapentin, Klonopin, Lorazepam, Risperdal, that one syringe of Haldol, narcolepsy drugs like Provigil, sleep aids, supplements like fish oil, and more I clean forget. I was also offered trials of Abilify, Seroquel, and other antipsychotics, plus electroshock, ECT. Turned all those down. And I survived therapies, including, but not limited to, Jungian, supportive, interpersonal, analytical, psychodynamic, cognitive, task-centered, solution-focused, dialectical behavioral, cognitive behavioral, and the rare session of alternative therapies like EMDR and NLP. Not one of these interventions helped materially. Not one. Yours truly was actually a counselor himself from 2001 to 2011. Strange but true. And my training simply gave me new labels for my bizarre life. No solutions. By the way, I had creepy medication side effects, tics, emotional numbness, difficulty thinking, feeling like a stranger in a strange mind. I dumped all treatment and medication in 2011. Cold turkey. Bouts of suicidality followed. But then again, they never left me during treatment either. Over the years, a few friends and one wife tossed the term autistic around, but I never followed up. It seemed so unlikely. I was so bright, so articulate, even somewhat successful, a few months at a time. I wasn't conscious of it then, and it still throws me. But I'd gotten good at hiding that I was, in reality, dysfunctional majority of the time. I could pass for normal by masking, when not under stress. Starting in junior high, I practiced classmates' normal behavior in the bathroom mirror. 'Cause early on, I learned to hide behavior that got me harsh judgment, a survival instinct. Things like stimming, meltdowns, panic attacks, total autistic burnouts, sometimes not functioning for months, years. No one knew. What changed things for me? The intimacy of the most successful relationship of my life. The only successful relationship of my life. In 2011, I faced losing my third wife. This forced me to look inside as deeply as I could. For decades, I'd blamed failures on being some kind of misunderstood genius, or picking the wrong spouse, being stuck with the wrong teacher, wrong doctor, wrong job. My third wife's family had a young boy diagnosed Asperger's, an old term like high-functioning autism. Now we drop functioning labels and just say autism. Watching him negotiate his social world, like watching myself on reality TV body cam footage. We had so many behaviors in common. Mine were maybe better disguised. With my wife's encouragement, at 63, I began reading articles, books, online forums on autism. In 2016, when we separated briefly, I finally re-entered therapy. This time, I contacted adult autism experts. I found them through Indiana University's IIDC, Indiana Institute for Disabilities Community. Bingo! Every symptom explained. Every character flaw traced back to this pervasive developmental diagnosis. I made progress in a kind of task-oriented counseling, working on strategies to accommodate characteristics that ain't gonna change. I left counseling after a year. Dealing with Medicaid transportation was too much for this autistic. Half the time, drivers never showed. Plus, Medicaid screwed up billing for my psychologist. He couldn't count on payment. Torture for this autist. I couldn't handle the anger, and I couldn't handle the guilt. But I got many gifts from external, credible diagnosis. Gifts, I guess I gave myself, out of gaining some level of certainty. Number one, I was able to accept that, yeah, I am different, with different needs from most folks. I'm no longer failing, at least not at being somebody else. Two, learning to provide for those needs as I discovered them. For instance, understanding my special interests are not hobbies. They are central to my survival, my job. Three, reducing stimulation, sensory and social. Moving to the country, going to few public or family events. Four, accepting I will have few intimate relationships in my life, and learning caution about new friendships. Only those few folks who take the long, twisty path to knowing me. After a lifetime greeting each new stranger like a new friend, my motto became, don't like me, don't hang. 5, spending unashamed time alone. I have a radical need for autonomy, while simultaneous difficulty managing independence when any other human is around me. As much as I crave intimacy, I must manage my time with humans, say less than 5 minutes with a stranger, before anxiety or panic sets in. Maybe 2 hours with my wife. Which brings me to 6, finding love. My non-autistic wife and I respect, admire, encourage, and desire one another. And after solid work, we communicate clearly and with compassion most of the time. Pretty much a first for me. By the way, we're still together, deep in love. But we live in separate homes a few hundred feet apart. She needs breaks from my intensity. Imagine that. And I find even her company exhausting after a few hours. So, should you or a loved one seek a diagnosis? There are no guaranteed treatments for autism. There is no guarantee of government aid. There are accommodations in education and employment for the formally diagnosed, but they are unproven in their infancy. So knowing this, why did I seek a diagnosis? It seemed like my only option. I needed some fig leaf of certainty. I could not shake a nagging fear that I was making this all up. Years of the "if I had only tried harder" scenario were driving me crazy. I needed outside confirmation for me. What did I get out of diagnosis and short-term counseling? A lot. Over the last few years, I've experienced reductions in anxiety, depression, suicidality, dissociation, night terrors, meltdowns, and panic. Most important, I've come to realize my natural state, autistic joy, not disease, joy. When I'm focused, creating words or music, walking alone in nature, watering my garden, cooking, fermenting pickles, making bread, decorating, yard sailing, reading, loving on my pets, meditating, even shaving in detail, I'm in the flow. There is no time, there is no space, no surroundings, no memory, no pain. Simply lizard warming in the sun, joy. Everything and everybody that restricts that joy, gotta go. Good riddance. So, diagnosis? Yeah, that's my story. And this time, I'm sticking to it. An earlier version of this podcast appeared in the online publication Neuroclastic. So, this week's personal detail? I ripped right out of the personal history behind this episode. I was founder and publisher of my own magazine at 30, ran an ad agency for years, went to grad school in my late 40s, headed an informal volunteer nonprofit nearly a decade, but on average only functioned about 3 months at a time before going down in flames. Want to know more? Check out my posts, paintings, poems, music, and politics at www.autisticaf.me. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it on social media. Better yet, send it directly to a friend.